half shows, I guess. I don't know what was going on with me, man. We are doing the February month in review, and this is a really good review. I think that you're going to enjoy this because the shows that we had were really pretty high impact shows, particularly, honestly, the last one. We did episode 343, Emotional Abuse versus Physical Abuse, Why Damage is Just as Severe. And then we did episode 343 and transitioned into emotional neglect in relationships, signs, effects, and how it impacts mental health. And then you got to check out 345, the full episode. We're going to try to do it justice, but I don't think we can, to review episode 345, Male Sexual Abuse and Sex Trafficking, PTSD and Recovery. And that was a part one. Part two, you're going to have to wait on until next week because we had a nice long conversation with Dr. John King, who has an incredible and powerful story about his personal experiences as a child with sexual abuse. And I tell you what, that just knocked my socks off. That was I don't know, Neil. Am I crazy to think like that was one of the better shows I think we've had? Is that a fair statement?
That was a an amazing show. I mean, him as a guest and just what he brought to the table and everything. And you really need to check out the next show because the recovery side is just amazing too. So
Yeah,
go hear his story, what he did, and then in the next week come back and hear about his recovery and what he overcame and where he is now.
yeah. So this is Through a Therapist Eyes, where you get personal insights about mental health and substance abuse in your car or home, but knowing this is not the delivery of therapy services. Look, we are licensed clinical therapists doing real clinical work every day, and this is where we talk honestly and openly about what actually helps. So we do try to disseminate information about mental health and blow up stereotypes and myths. On the month in review, we have our month in review panel, which is Mr. Neil Robinson. You heard him already out behind the curtains. How you doing today?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Yeah, it's been a long one. I've had a long couple of days. I'm not gonna lie. And then we got Kyle King, who hangs out with us on the end of the month, last week when we do these month in reviews. How are you, sir?
Doing well. I'm like you. It's been a long week already.
It's kind of been a long month. Yeah, I'm one day post birthday, so I worked until 8 o'clock last night, closing the month and everything. I was like, oh, geez, you know.
Uh, can you believe 2 months have already gone by?
No, man, I'm hitting March in like a minute.
I know. Oh,
That's nuts. So this is let me see. What else do I like to say? Your job is to subscribe, click the buttons, the YouTubes, the reviews, 5 stars, all that good stuff. Listen, we really do try to help you out. We do this free charge with our time, and we ask that you refer a friend. We're looking for YouTube subscribers, that type of a thing. Am I correct in saying? Do I remember correct? I need to check my show notes. We have a celebration of 3 people. I think we do. Wait, yeah, we do. We got Q Queenie 777. Hey Q, welcome to the Through Therapist Eyes. We got Miss Kim Rogers and none other than Mr. Travis Durkee. Welcome to the Through Therapist Eyes thing. So we had a big week with 3 new YouTube members. Tell somebody, guys. We need to be found. We need to help more people. I'll stand by the clinical work that we present and what we do. Contact at throughtherapisteyes.com. It's a good way to interact with us. We do YouTube lives usually on 6:15 to 6:30, and that is a great way to contact with us, hang out with us, and we like to embed that into the show if we can. So we are going to launch with Mr. Kyle King starts out a segment with what do we call this? Down the rabbit
down
hole
rabbit
with
hole.
Mr. Kyle King. This is something that is hopefully mental health related in some regard, a current event, a thing that's happening. But he takes us down a little bit of a rabbit hole and we have fun talking about it. So, what you got this
Yeah.
week, man?
Well, maybe not a current event, but definitely something that's coming up. It's related to springtime. As nice warm weather's hitting North Carolina, I'm
Sure.
enjoying it. Uh, it got me to thinking as I'm sitting there looking at my bird feeders on the camera because we got those camera bird feeders, and here's this nice, beautiful cardinal.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, is there any studies that have been done for things like bird watching or trying to understand how birds can relate to humans and all those? And there's actually been a bunch of it done that way. And it's just
Huh.
amazing some of the things that I'm looking into. You just something as simple as the health of the colors of the male cardinal, because the male is that big bright red color, and the
Mm.
female is not as bright red. but it's that red, the red of it can signal very healthy. They're getting the right nutrients. They're healthy. They're doing all the right things.
I
And
thought it
but
was
it
just a
how
sex thing. It did.
no,
The bird do it thing.
I had no idea there was different colors of red with a cardinal, and there is.
Okay.
So, uh, but when then we think about when it translates to a human, the cardinal is very authentic in the color, in the way they are. Us as human, how are we expressing authenticity? You know, are we expressing it through fashion, through art, through personal projects? And if we do something like that, how does that impact us, mentally? Something just as simple as that can lower social anxiety, you know, bring satisfaction into your life. Even something, the song the bird sings, it just it's unreal as I started reading through all this. And this is like the NIH.gov, just a song the bird sings. When they sing it, they're safe. There's no outside factors, messing with them. There's not any danger. But us mentally as humans, guess what? We have so many distractions around. We have so many things that can increase our anxiety. And if we think about that, we think about just that owning something that we can watch, we can listen to. We lower our anxiety. We
Is this why
improve.
Neil's skin is so white and light? Is that what's happening, Neil?
No, that's my
Sorry, I
that's my
interrupted.
that's my
No,
Polish
no,
skin. That's okay.
yeah. But I think it goes back to uh, just stop and smelling the roses, because if we pay attention more to some of the things that they do, even something as simple as mating, they typically mate for, they're very monogamous. And one of the things that one of the studies did is just that partnership. We talk about it all the time in here. We have to have somebody to partner with.
Hmm.
Maintaining close friends, building team activities, increases oxytocin, reduces loneliness, stronger emotional, all of these things kind of combined, together just to build our mental health up, just by simply watching what they do. And even by simply watching them, it can reduce your stress.
So are you saying there's like a correlation between birds and
There
humans
is.
in texture and color and whatever and all, or what's
There
what's
is.
the connection?
Yeah, there is correlation because back to the color. They are, if you take a look at the color, that color is strong. That color is something that
Hmm.
defines them. What defines us as a human? Our clothes, what we do, how, maybe what art we do. But we want to build that authentic feeling, just like that red cardinal does. And that's kind of what they were, the studies have shown, is that as you start to express yourself as that red cardinal, that bright red versus a dull red, it can reduce your social anxiety. It can give you a higher, satisfaction in life, and it gives you an identity. So there's that mental aspect. And that's the one thing that one of these studies has shown is, like, in just that particular example, the social media, it encourages curated personas. And you don't you can look at it two different ways, right?
You mean to tell me those beauty filters on Facebook are bad?
Right. So see, these are the kinds of things that we can correlate. Just a simple thing like the red color, along with many other things, and trust me, there's a whole list of things I found about this. I was very enlightened as I started diving down this rabbit hole. I'm like, I never would have thought we could compare ourselves to a bright red cardinal and all the things that it could list. And how is like, wow, that kind of correlates to human life because of this factor and this factor. It's really wild to see. I mean, just something like I said, the song, reducing your stress level, finding that quietness. And we don't have a lot of that because we have so many mental distractions in front of us. The screen, you know, going out in traffic, walking down the street. listening to all of those things. How we cannot quiet our mind, but when they start to sing, that's something that they use to quiet their mind, that they're
I love
safe.
I love this rabbit hole, honestly, because that's one of the things that I do for self care. I've kind of gotten a little bit out of the habit, but Saturday morning for me is always like get my cup of coffee, go out to my back deck. I just sit down, and I've got some
Right.
bird feeders and some stuff that I look around, and this is one of the things that I do. And it's also I'm laughing inside because I woke up yesterday, just yesterday, and I woke up early, and the sun was kind of coming up, and I was kind of whatever, and I mean to tell you, the birds were going crazy, Kyle. It's like they all come from up north, and they just went nuts. I mean, they were just singing, man. I was like, what an awesome way to wake up, man.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's all fun and games to have a mockingbird out your window chirping at 2 a.m. in the morning. My wife legitimately was gonna go buy a gun just to shoot it if it happened one more time. But yeah, it's really cool to see the environment of the birds when they feel safe and you hear them singing and you see the different interactions. There was a lot of
Mhm.
like English blue wrens in our neighborhood this year, which is really pretty to see because they're like that light blue with that orange belly. And so yeah, it's seeing the birds out there. My wife's aunt always had the bird feeder. We go out there, we'd always sit and talk about the birds, and
Mhm.
it's such good to have that nature connection too on top of everything else.
Yeah. And if you watch them, and one of the things, another piece of it too, is like if you watch their motions, they're very gentle. They're very, on purpose. And yeah, I think for us, we have so many things that we're distracted by: the computer, the phone, the whatever, the social media aspect. And it increases, it increases our stress. It does not reduce our fatigue. These are the kind, it creates burnout. And that's where, something, the correlation there between, the animal versus the human factor. They're they're a lot less stressed than we are. Let's put it that way.
It's funny, you're tempting me with my newest favorite topic, the increased rapid pace of technology changing and dramatically changing humanity. I think it's the
Hmm.
most challenging challenge humankind has had in the history of humankind. I really am believing that. So, you know what's funny, Neil? You can't fake this. This dude loves going down the rabbit holes. I love that you fit with this, man. You can't fake it. This is something that you do this regularly and naturally and normally, don't you?
I just look at something and I'm like, huh,
I love
all
that.
right, let's think about that a little bit.
That
It's
is very
different.
cool. But just to be clear, we're not talking about skin texture or clothing and
No.
all that kind of stuff
No.
as like the Cardinals are. So Neil is just as healthy as the rest of us. That's totally true, right?
Yep.
He says yes. He says yes. Good stuff. Yeah, man. Listen, self care. Just so you know, right from a clinical perspective, I talk about this ad nauseum in counseling with people all the time. Um, I define it as fun, relaxing, enjoyable activities that aren't self destructive in any way and that aren't work related tasks. I call this the cornerstone of mental
Mhm.
health. If you don't have the ability to kind of distract yourself from the reality and then come over here to relax and then plug back in, this can be 5 minutes in length, it can be 5 weeks in length. You can spend thousands of
Yep.
dollars or no money at all. Self care, I mean, it's not even negotiable. I mean, I will spend an entire session if somebody's struggling with this idea, whether it be because they have clinical anxiety or just the regular run of the mill all of our lives, as Kyle you're saying. So self care is not a negotiable; it's an absolute requirement. Think of at least three things that you do to really check out. You know, I watch I watch sports. I got I'm into a good book right now, Endurance, talking about shipwreck and these people that survived. I do bird watching. I get on trails.
Mhm.
You get me on a golf course.
Yep.
Once or twice a year. That's kind of cool, Kyle. We're due, right?
Yeah, that's right. Hiking. Yeah, I do the hiking. Of course, when from a bird perspective on the golf course, I have that crow that's mocking me every time I tee off. So,
Yeah, there is that. Did you ever hit him?
no.
Yeah, have you tried?
Hit the ball or hit the bird.
But the ball with the bird with the ball. Yeah, that's what I was going after. All
No.
right, let's launch in a little bit. So we got episode 341 that we did a few weeks ago. Emotional abuse versus physical abuse, why the damage is just as severe. Um, the three questions that we had you think about is, how do we recognize abuse when there are no visual injuries? And then, secondly, why is emotional abuse so often minimized or dismissed by victims and others? And then, what happens to a person's sense of self when emotional abuse is chronic or persists over time? Now, I want to say something from the get go in on this particular topic is that, you know, we we have accomplished breaking down stigmas and stereotypes to the extent that people will talk about these things. And I love that. But people are using like our clinical words and just sort of generalizing them. And this is one that happens a lot with. Interestingly, it doesn't happen with emotional neglect, which we talked about as well, physical abuse, or sexual abuse. It's for some reason, right? Kyle, I'm curious from your non clinical mind as we talk about this, right? For some reason, am I wrong? People have picked up on the use of this word and just everybody's in emotional abuse. Does that sound
Correct.
fair from your perspective, just in the world?
Oh, I would 100% say that.
Yeah.
And I think about this, and I know this could be, um, yeah, very very true in in just a normal relationship. Um, but I think as even go into the business side of it, as a manager uh, at a company, this is something that I am very cognizant of. I don't want to belittle anybody. I want to
Yeah.
coach them up. I want to empower them. I want to grow them up in their career. I say this all the time, in just in the corporate world, that people don't leave jobs, people leave people. And
Mhm.
if I'm constantly belittling somebody, or if I'm, constantly riding their tail, then guess what? I'm not doing my job as a manager. I'm not doing my job to help them emotionally. I'm not doing my job to grow them. And I have been in situations where I've had very emotional employees that I've had to deal with. And it is a challenge. And every single one is different in how you deal with them. And it's just like any normal relationship, whether it's friends or whether it's spouse, every single relationship that you deal with in everyday life is different in how you deal with it. That person, you never know what they're going through. And sometimes you got to take a step back when you're having that conversation with them, and just really just listen a lot of times. And for I think it's very impactful in the word you say, across in everyday life, because those people that are already at that emotional, I guess, cliff, you could really push them off of that with your words. And so it's no, it's a big thing for me.
So two things. First of all, I'm really glad you did what you did, and what I'm referring to is move your camera just a little bit down.
Yeah.
Neil, his head. He was like looking at it like his head is coming from nowhere. I'm like,
Yeah. Had
uh,
to adjust. I saw it myself. So yeah.
the other thing though is what I'm getting at is like, yeah, I follow everything you said. And I think you're pretty on point. It's almost like I want you to be aware of all of those things, Kyle. But I want to. It's just a quick word of caution about operating out of fear of executing emotional abuse or um, claiming that that's happening when it's not. Like I think Casey kind of pointed out, it's not because somebody just was rude to you for a day or something was kind
Right.
of going on. There's a different level here that we're talking about. I mean, I've got to know you well over a little bit of time, Kyle, and I don't think that you've been emotionally abusive. I would be surprised, although I don't know you well enough to say that. I've not seen you interact with these employees, but I know you care. I know you're kind, and I know you've been rude sometimes. But that's not emotional abuse. There's a
Right.
very big difference. Neil, you listen to the show. I'm curious to spin over to you to see like how I mean you follow what I'm saying, and we talked about it on the show. And so how would you mark in your mind having listened to us and being a part of it and your own thoughts of like what in your mind what would elevate it to such a level, right?
I mean, really, I think it goes back to the chronic to me, emotional abuse is more that chronic over and over and over and over kind of situation, right? That's and I think you have that. I just realized you had that in the notes, but that's something that I think more when you because there's a difference between one time situation or have someone's having a bad day to okay every time I talk to this person, it's always they're always going at me, right? It's I think that's the hardest. I think that's where it draws the line, right? It's the difference between having anxiety and like an anxious moment and like really having anxiety, being emotionally abused versus that person just doesn't know how to regulate themselves and they just said something hurtful, right? But every time it comes across, I think that's the biggest part that I would
Yeah.
say with everything is the continual repeated, basically verbal emotional abuse that they go through, right?
It's
Um,
the full relationship. It isn't a moment. This really bothers me what I'm about to say, but I'm going to be genuine and say it. I have unfairly been critical to my children, and that pains me, man, because I don't want to be a critical person. But I say that in part one to take accountability because I'm not perfect at all. But that is a very different reality than than this chronicity that you're differentiating with, Neil. Yeah, like I would very clearly say I've not been abusive to my children, even though I've done that. The difference is when you have a highly critical person in your life. I've come to see in my work with people that that is like so crushing to the spirit of a person that they really take that with them, which leads to one of the main things that we were talking about with like core assertion that there's a targeting of the person. There's damage to that person. There's the self. And when you receive criticism after criticism after criticism on a chronic level, it just it destroys the spirit of a person down to a core level. That's abusive, right? I mean, that's a very big difference than having a high conflict relationship with a person or getting loud during a fight. Those are not good things. I don't want to be misconstrued, but when you get into the abuse level, man, it's just so crushing. And there's no bruises, there's no bangs, there's no hurt spots or cuts. It's just it invades into that person's
Mhm.
psyche, and it's devastating.
Well, there are no bruises, not physically, but it definitely emotionally, right?
Oh, metaphorically, it bruises the soul. Oh
Right.
yeah,
Because I mean, if I'm constantly coming to somebody and I'm being negative, I'm just saying, Chris, that shirt I really don't like. What if I'm constantly saying that to you? What are you going to say? Look at me. Every time you look at me, you're going to think, "Oh gosh, am I really dressing up for him? Right?
I'm gonna
Am I
start
doing the
believing
right
it.
thing?" Right.
I'm
Exactly.
gonna start believing it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just something as simple as that really bruises the ego. Um, yeah, it happens I see it a lot with people.
Yeah, it's brutal. And so we're talking about, these things that create intimidation, when kids are fearful of their parents, or, Kyle, you're talking about managing people. I mean, somebody may perceive something different and become fearful, but when you have a pattern where people are very reactive to you, or they're walking on eggshells, or they just don't know how to take you, or they're dreading
Mhm,
interacting on this particular issue because it's just all of those things are indicators of like, whoa,
mhm.
something's more here than what we want to be okay with.
Yeah, we won't get into politics. I mean, and how that can impact people. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very true.
yeah, it's and it is. It's crushing on a macro level just as much as a micro level. Whole cultures. I mean, um, let's just say, with the I'm trying not to think of racial issues as black and white, but with the Indians, I mean,
Mhm,
when we're just crushing to their whole culture, when I was a kid, I remember this phrase "Indian giver," and I said that out loud as a young adult, and somebody like crushed me on it. I was like, "Whoa, I didn't even know I said I didn't know I was ignorant." But that means that is a it just crushes the whole culture when you develop a huge stereotype like that with a whole group of people. So you're right. This can be on a macro level just as much as
mhm.
micro. Neil, what else stuck out from you on that show? Put you on the spot a little bit.
Um, I think it goes back to, I think the other part that's interesting that got talked about is, when you look at the victim, you look at what goes on that's constantly emotional abuse, you start thinking about how I can, it becomes more about how what you need to change to, because of, like, we talked about a second ago, when you keep hearing the same stuff over and over again, you start believing it, and then you start trying to change yourself because you start putting their critical
Hmm.
comments or their abusive comments, they become reality to you. My mother-in-law, she talked about their things where she grew up, like, she didn't want to wear certain clothes because no one liked what she wore. She was kind of a hippie, right? She was the hippie of the family. And so she constantly changed the way she did things because of that one thing. And I'm at this point, I'm like, well, everyone who criticized you is, well, one, passed away now, so one, you you need to move on from that part. But it's still the sadness of, like, she changed her life because the critical people, whether they meant to or not, or whatever's going on, there was still that same emotional abuse. And that's kind of putting it lightly, the other stuff she's gone through, but it's just the reality of it, right? When you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, it becomes true to you, and then you start internalizing it, and you start figuring out, how do I change myself? Because this person doesn't like her because they think this of this kind of stuff. I think that's a
It's a
part that
key
you have
component.
to understand.
Yeah, it's a key component that indicates it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and we have. I want to give like kind of an example just to kind of demonstrate sort of how insidious this can be, because when we're talking about these elements of abuse, it's like it can be framed in different ways, like, hey, I'm just being honest with you, or I have high standards, that's why I'm critical of you, or I'm having tough love is another one. That's in parenting, this is, oh, that's a crusher. I'm just exercising tough love, or various things like this. It when it begins to change somebody into a negative way, that's a problem. And we know of a really good example, I think. I feel pretty confident that our mutual friend wouldn't have any trouble sharing this. Would you agree in what recently happened with business?
I think we can keep it wide open, kind of not really target, but I think it's a great example. Um, not
Yeah,
not go into specifics, but yeah, we have a guy who started a business, and he had his employees that came in with this new business, and after, how long has it been? Like nine, six
yeah, it
months,
was like
nine
a
months,
year. It's been
a
riding for a
year.
year. Yeah,
And it's really sad to say, because you talk to him, because when he first started the business, he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna open five of these. It's a great franchise. I think it's gonna be great."
exactly.
And literally, what was it? 2 months ago, you asked him, like, "How's it going? What do you think about expansion?" He's like, "Dude, I'm done with this one." Right? His employees just wore him down. There was a really toxic one, there was an unproductive one, and there was kind of the third one. Right? There were three. But and it's really kind of interesting to see, this guy is a really positive guy. So all of a sudden, to see him just get drained on our meetings and our calls, it was really. It,
Diminishing,
mm-hmm.
diminishing.
And it was just so, but the bright side is, now he has new employees. He's basically cleaned house. He has brand new people, and his attitude, his delight is just back in our conversations. And once again, this was a gradual, over the course of a year, you start realizing it. There were some warning signs like 4 months ago with one of the crazy people that worked with them, but it wasn't like, but you just don't realize it. And he even realized after the fact, it's like, dude, I've been, like, literally abused by these employees.
Right.
Hmm.
I mean, you wouldn't think that, but like, in also, not that it matters, but this is a big dude. This is not a small fella, right? Right.
Yeah.
And and it just it was something that I don't think that he could talk about. He didn't really make mention of it. And in fact, there was even a mention of like, look, I didn't even realize this was happening. And that's the what I'm trying to drive at is this is the insidious nature, the chronicity of it, the overpowering, the changing self. Neil was right. I mean, it was a complete business change. So this happens in the workplace. This happens with
Hmm.
parenting. This happens with marriages, of course, in lots of different contexts. And like we said, on a macro level. So with all of these things, especially too, it's just so hard because of the shame to let anybody know. We didn't even know this was going on with our very close friend until like he was really deep far into it. Because I'm willing to bet that had started to really be a drain before the 4 months that we knew of it. Does that sound fair, Neil?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you don't even know it's doing it yourself. You're not even aware
Right.
of your own. It just begins to happen,
Right.
right?
And I think the important thing to think about too is I know Kyle, you emphasize the importance of a manager or supervisor who, over the employees, the people that they're over. It goes the other way as well. Like you
Hmm.
think about, I'm thinking like some of my teams I've been in, and I think about how there are certain times where you get one or two people that end up kind of controlling the situation, and then they kind of get the rest of the team to go after the manager. And I'm thinking
Mm.
about like at one place I work, I'm like, now that I kind of look back, I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel bad for our manager because the way the team kind of treated him. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like it's those things. So it works both ways, right? Even those in a power position, while yes, they can easily affect their people they're under, but it works the same way. If you get a group of people together, you're basically emotionally abusing someone that's above you, right? It's that same idea. That's why you also don't have more than three kids at one time because they'll team up against the parent. But that's a whole nother
Parents
thing.
getting abused.
Parental
Which
abuse.
happens.
You know, it does actually. We how many stories have I heard about
Yeah.
parents that have an alcoholic or drug affected kid, son or daughter, by the way, right? Like, it's wild. Let's move on to time purposes and combine this with the second show that we did, which is in a lot of ways the same stuff. Oh no, wait. First of all, we started a new segment, Kyle. I'm not sure if you've heard that. Have you stuck in with the practical questions section
Yes.
segments that we do? Yeah,
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
heard those. I'm enjoying those, and so I kind of I felt like I might want to do that, when we're reviewing the shows. So here goes. This is what we do in the regular show through the month is we all take a turn. The therapist, Victoria, myself, Casey, and John, we all take a turn, and we offer you actually practical questions as though we're the therapist speaking through the screen to you. So when it relates to emotional abuse and I'm working with you, if you've experienced anything like this in session, I may ask you like, you know, to look at this from a different perspective in the relationship that you're having, in the experiences that you're having with this person. If you were to kind of go out of body or zoom out 30,000 foot and look down at yourself and what's happening, if this were happening to someone else that you care about, someone else that you're really protective over or that you love, that you really feel fondly of, would you call that abuse yourself looking at that? That's a hard thing to do. But just take a different perspective and turn that around and watch yourself as though you're somebody else and then wonder if you would really actually get to the place of being able to call that because that can indicate something. Please pay attention to what's going on so that you're not alone with it. Moving on, that's the practical question. Moving on to episode 344, emotional neglect in relationships, signs, effects, and how it impacts mental health. You can kind of see a theme, right, Kyle?
Yep. So far.
Hmm. Three questions that we asked is, have you ever felt invisible in a relationship? Oh my goodness, that we talked about as being one of the most painful things people can experience. I learned that at a conference. Someone taught me that it's not losing a son, it's not uh, dealing with a tragic airplane crash, or it's when you're invisible. It it's like you're not even worthy enough for me to acknowledge that you're here. So anyway, have you ever felt invisible in a relationship, even if you weren't being attacked? What is the difference between emotionally harmed and being emotionally unseen? And did you grow up learning that your emotions were too much or not important? You talk too much or you do too much, you're too busy, you're too something or other critical. These are really signs of like, wow, I mean this may be rising a little bit more into the realm of neglect, which is a weird word. You guys think about neglect? I'm curious, like Physical abuse people talk about, domestic violence we talk about, sexual abuse is really something that is on the rise of awareness, particularly with the Epstein case and whatnot. Emotional abuse is thrown out so regularly and repeatedly, flippantly sometimes. I don't know that people think even about neglectful forms of abuse.
Well, I mean, the one thing to think about when you say that, and this kind of got me, they literally have charges when you have, children neglect, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So to me, if there's charges against someone for neglecting your child, then there has to be a seriousness to the idea of of neglecting. And I think in a relationship it's hard because when you neglect a child, the seriousness of death, right? Because they can't take care of themselves. But when it comes to your partner in a relationship, if you neglect them, like what does that really? I mean, it gets downplayed because you just don't. Oh, it's just another adult. They'll deal with it, right?
Mm, that's a
But
good
Maybe,
point. That's a really good point. Go ahead.
maybe. To your point, I mean, it could be very simple. I mean, what about the workaholics, right? Are they neglecting their spouse? They're never there. They're never home. They're always away. They're always traveling. What does that lead to from a neglect, emotional neglect standpoint, right? It makes that other person want for that. You know, if they have friends, maybe that's enough. But if they don't have friends, they could, reach outside the relationship. So it could create a whole different, kind of problems, just by having that emotional neglect.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And my mind was going on a little journey, Neil, with what you're talking about, and you're right there, Kyle, in the sense that we really do tend to see this probably over proportionally with domestic violence or Department of Social Services, or we call it
Mhm.
different things through the states around the world. You've got agencies that protect kids, and we also have a lot of the same thing for the elderly. There's elderly abuse as well that is neglectful, but we don't really think about it. I probably am not, if I'm being truly transparent and honest, which I require of myself. I'm hoping I can do that, as I hope people can do that with me in my work. I don't look at this probably enough in marriages, to be honest. I don't assess that, or my brain doesn't really kind of dial into, like your example, Kyle, a workaholic, which means you're really really dialed in and paying extra energy and service to what you do for money for work, and meanwhile your spouse is at home like alone, and then you come home and you're like, you know barely a word because you're exhausted. And again, the chronicity, it's day
Mhm.
in and day out, where the spouse begins to feel like,
A
I'm just
roommate
not worthy of your time.
feels like a roommate, not a partner.
And I think even a little bit more than that. Yeah, there is that where we grew apart in the roommate thing, but there's a I don't want to recognize you. You're not important enough for me to invest in it. Roommates, you're cordial, you're engaging, and I feel like there's sort of another level where we want to get to, because I mean, it's not neglectful just to be a hard worker or to be busy with
Right.
your friends and have your life. It's neglectful when the person begins to really feel through their spirit that they're just, you don't care about me like at all. I am dead to you. Like, that's being invisible is really really next level. That makes sense.
Absolutely. It
mm-hmm.
does.
Yeah. Um What did we talk about in the show, Neil? I guess when we were kind of dealing with that, I got compliments on Casey, by the way, man. My people like talk to me, was like, "Oh man, she's smart. She's smart as a whip." I love Casey, Casey, Casey. Everybody loves them some Casey.
Yeah, Casey's awesome. So I think the interesting part about, like, when you look at emotional neglect in a relationship, it's kind of a little bit different than, say, your parent child, or even like a working situation, right? Because in theory, in a relationship, a lot of times people you choose this other person to be with them, and the next thing you know, now that other person is actually taking that trust that you're building, the fact that I want to spend time with you, I want to build this relationship with you, and then all of a sudden they're just like, now they're treating you like dog dookie, right? That's kind of an interesting take on this, as well as the fact like you're making the effort to build a relationship with them, and they're just trying to continuously try to tear it down by this emotional abuse, right? So it's kind of an interesting, to me in my head, it's like it's kind of an interesting take on it because I don't know. It's just there's it's almost worse to it because of the fact that this person is actually making that choice to have a relationship, to want to connect, to want to build a relationship, and this person's not doing it. I don't know why, but that just kind of stood out to me. Like, it's just different. It just seems worse. I don't know.
It's
Yeah,
almost like they could be doing it for a reason, on purpose. Hey, maybe they don't want to be in a relationship anymore, but they don't want to cut the tie. They don't want to be the one to cut the ties. They could be doing it so that the other person cuts the ties. Or and I just think so many things that could go wrong here, by having such an invisible, uh, emotional invisibility. It's just people can fall into a bad place, very much, very quickly with that, or they could go into a very dark place, with the technology these days. Who knows?
absolutely. I will point out a really good example of all this stuff. A much better example than workaholic, I think, honestly, we were talking about before, is substance abusing families. So whenever there is a mother or a father, particularly, that have alcohol or drug related trouble, we know, and we've talked about it on the show, that that's a family wide deal. That's not just a single person's issue. It's a family dynamic, and neglect is one of the major things that happens with this. And so when somebody's life gets kind of consumed with their relationship with alcohol or drugs, what do you think that spouse is experiencing?
Yeah.
I mean, not that an alcoholic drinks every day. Oftentimes that's the case. So I don't want to perpetuate that myth that if you drink every day you're an alcoholic by saying this, but I'll use that as to say, like, if your routine is like go to work, come home, crack the beer, crack another, crack another, crack a fourth or a fifth, and now you're buzzed up and you're watching your show, you might grab a bite that the spouse made you to eat, and you crack a few more, and then you go to bed. Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and every day the same story rolls by. The wife or the husband of that alcoholic is kind of like, what am I doing here? Like, you're I don't know how you're feeling. You're not telling me what's going on with your work. We don't really connect. I mean, I am feeling very unseen. So whenever I hear somebody's history involving alcohol or drug abusing individuals in their life, my clinical head kicks into overdrive with all of these types of things that I'm really educatedly guessing that you've experienced. And I'm usually there are elements of that there. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's
Mhm.
sexual. But again, it might just be, look at how I said that. It might just be, air quotes, Kyle, it might just be the thing that really kills your soul is neglect, right? So it's not smaller, it's not simpler. I know that sexual abuse, which is where we're probably going next, right, is is a whole lot more loud or damning to a thing. It's, we get freaked out about that, but like these things with emotional abuse and neglect, abuse that comes through neglect are really hard. Are we too serious, Kyle? Like, we need a joke or something. Crack a joke, for crying out loud.
Ah, this
Right?
is this is tough subjects. It really is. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I don't know, Neil. Did I pour it on too thick? Because we had a grand finale this month.
Yeah, you got a little down in the dumps with these ones, but I think it's good to hear because yeah, it's yeah. Usually your theme you kind of go different parts, but yeah, this is kind of a Debbie Downer month. I mean, when you think about it, um, and that's what I'm really excited about the next week's episode because talking about that recovery, and I think that's where I think this is important because I think these things are very. It's I kind of think about the idea of the different traumas, right? You have in your body you have cancer, right? Cancer comes in and you don't realize it's become a problem until it hits a major organ or it spreads, it becomes a large mass, right? To me, emotional neglect, emotional abuse is that same idea of a cancer. When you look at the sexual abuse or the physical abuse, it's more like a car wreck, right? You see what happens, you go from regular to all of a sudden now this happens. But the emotional abuse and the neglect that comes into it is like that cancer that you live with because it kind of slowly builds up and you don't realize it. You kind of, oh, I got a pain. Well, I'll just deal with it later, right? I have this, and then all of a sudden you have something major happen, right? You have major headaches, and it's just as bad. And the problem is just like emotional neglect and just like a cancer. If you don't address it sooner, if you don't go get your check, if you don't look at it from the outside and say, what the heck's going on with me? It's going to be too late. The damage, the repair you have to go through is going to be
Mhm.
so much more extensive than if you looked at it from, you talk to your best friend and they say, hey, something's weird about your relationship with so and so, right? When you find out soon enough and you can address it, it's different than 5 years down the road and now your self-esteem is shot. You're not hanging out with your friends because you don't want the other person to get mad at you, or you're going to have an affair with someone because you're being neglected, right? There's all these things that come
Mhm.
into it. So I think that's the part you have to understand is neglect is really damaging. You just don't realize it till it gets to the point where it becomes a major major problem,
I
emotionally.
love that metaphor. That
Mhm.
is, dude, man. Uh, Kyle Neil's a therapist hanging out with us too much, man. He's been hanging out with us way too daggone long. It's almost scary. Let me do a practical question so that we can get to the grand finale with Mr. John King. So I will ask you, you the listener, thinking about this and hearing this, right? Have you learned to downplay your needs? Needs are a weird word. People don't even like to mention them sometimes, but you may have begun to downplay that. And maybe that's because you haven't really been responded to, that you haven't been fully engaged, or you just sort of feel even weird saying that you really want something. So when you're looking at your partner or your person that you're feeling questions with, have you downplayed things about yourself or tried to make it such that you're fine? That's what everyone says, right? I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need anything. Be careful about that because that could very much be a sign that you too are kind of dealing with this. Let's do the last one, Kyle. I'm telling you what, I was impressed with this homeboy. We had this dude.
I think next year you're going to have to change to like a love month for February.
Oh yeah, yeah, great, Chris. It just dawned on me. It's the Valentine's and all this stuff, and you have talk about emotional abuse, neglect, and trauma
Really
recovery.
good
Like
point.
what the heck?
Happy Valentine's Day, honey. Let's listen to Through a Therapist's Eyes and see how down depressed we can get.
Hey, even in my class, I did a love mix for February. So there you go.
Beat to my own drum, man. I don't follow the world's themes. I must admit, I didn't even pick that's hysterical. um, Mr. John King smoking a cigar, hanging out with us on the show with a heck of a powerful story. Neil, how do we bring us into what he brought to us, man? I mean, big deal.
I'll tell you what. When he first talked about his experience and how it started, and I'm like, holy crap! Like
Yeah,
one for him to be a guy in that situation or a boy in that situation, a young boy,
four.
4 years old when he first had
Mm.
this experience
Now
with
let's be careful, Neil. Let's not go explicit. I don't want to have to mark this
right.
episode
But
explicit
it
against him.
but the
But
fact that it was a young boy with an adult woman, like this was really kind of an interesting thing that you just don't hear stories about. Like that's his opening part of our conversation, and it's like it kind of changes the whole dynamic of everything he talks about through the rest of it because you it changed your mindset because when you think of sexual abuse, this is not what's talked about, which was part of the conversation that we had. This is not what people discuss or think. And
it cannot be discussed in man world.
hmm
It's horrible.
but yeah, that was the big part that I got out of it. And then I mean, like I said, his experience with every because I think it was like 8 or 10 years he went through this because he couldn't remember when it finally came to him
I
that
feel
he
like it
realized
was
what was
up
going.
till his 20s, Neil.
Well, he said he talked about something about being like 12 or 16. He wasn't sure exactly the age, but he said it was through either he was 12 or he was 16. Either way, it's still longer than any kid should have to go through, right? I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy situation. But then to talk to him now and talk about his journey where he went through different things, how much it affected his first marriage. He's on his second or his third marriage. I'm trying to
I think
remember.
his second marriage, yeah.
But it's just so cool to see his realization of what he went through, the changes he went, how it affected him, and then how it affected him in his relationships. Like it was really a sharp guy. I mean, like I said, he had this wall of books, and I said, "Which one's your favorite book?" And he showed me this thing, and this was in between the shows. Literally, the wall I think was like 15 feet with like 6 books, 6 shelves covered. And then he said, "He's like, imagine I've given away 5 times what's on this wall."
Yeah.
And so his wife made him stop it. But this guy is just he's dove in to learn as much as he can. He's there to help. Like it was an amazing episode. You need to watch it.
And here's the thing, he was very clear about this. Maybe that's why I was mixed about the age that occurs to me, Neil, because he was living his whole life. This was never dealt with in his adult life. So the molestations and the trauma from trafficking. Also, we haven't even said that yet, Neil. He was
Mm-hmm.
involved in trafficking, and he gave an interesting description of that you'll have to catch for the show because I want to get to first responders with this. But he 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 lived his whole life with a lot of anger, a lot of harm, a lot of hurt. Bled out probably on his first husband, first wife, and all that, and he didn't really get to dealing with this until he was 45. Okay, like live a full adult life with this. And we know from our friend Chris Davos, who was on the show as well. Pop that episode, Neil. I want to give credence to Chris as well when he did a very similar thing, kind of as in addition to sharing his torturous abuse, where we created a program called This Will Not Defeat Me.com because you know it just poured out when this stuff came out for both of those dudes. And that's just something, like I said, that people will live a lifetime and never really address this stuff. And that's where it gets really damning. Um, Kyle, he taught me something, dude. I was kind of amazed at learning this, and I loved that he shared this with me. I told him on the show, I'll take it for the rest of my clinical career. You got Chris's show, Neil?
It's 232.
Yeah, 232. And what did we entitle it?
Introducing This Will Not Defeat Me.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. We were introducing the program, and he shared his whole thing. I have been very partial, Kyle, to talk to and work with first responders and military personnel as well, but especially with first responders. But I feel like he has some of the statistics with them too. This guy's a walking brain. He's amazing for detailed information because he shared, by the way, he's on the spectrum, right? So he didn't really have the capacity to kind of convey this throughout his life as well until he all came out. Now he's like a world renowned speaker about it. But um, first responders have an overwhelming percentage of their own childhood sexual abuse that they've never been able to address. And that is one of the things that brings them into that vector, that business, that sector of operation.
To
Kyle, it's
protect.
like 30,
To,
40%.
wow, because they want to protect. I'm assuming.
Exactly. You messed with me then. You're not messing with me now. And I think there's also added things that he didn't talk about, and I'm just sort of educatedly guessing that there's an adrenaline rush. There's a feeding of the body that gets triggered and escalated, and hyper vigilant is all of this PTSD stuff, and you're it's like a moth to a flame, man. You're a moth to the flame. You've gone and endured this. You've survived this. You're a powerful, courageous survivor. And now you go into special operations like, policing, especially, and firefighting, and all of our first responders, men and women. And he made it clear that it was not gendered. I was just fascinated by that. I did not know that, nor ever
Mm-mm.
was exposed
Nope.
to that reality.
No, wouldn't have picked up on that. But it makes I can now that you say it, I can understand why.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
You know,
You know.
wow, that's
The
Um,
correct. That's very courageous of him and be able to come out and share that information. I mean, it's I can't even fathom, what anybody that has gone through something like that.
yeah,
So,
it takes a incredible amount of courage to take just the first step. And Neil's right. We did a part one and a part two with John, and he's going to have in the second episode, which will be out next week. We'll be publishing that, where he talks about recovery. Neil, don't let me get off of here without talking about the daffodils, but but highlighting like, man, it's the silence that kills
mm,
on this issue. And I'm not trying to downplay, women that come out and talk about this. We had the Me Too movement, and I mean, Kyle, I don't know if you even noticed this, but we had a congressional hearing where they were talking with the Epstein case and the things that are going on here in the states with that horrific set of abuses. And I'm not getting into the politics and what was going on with Pam Bondi and how all this was going, but one of the senators, they're doing their process in interviewing the attorney general, and did I say that right? Pam Bondi, attorney general.
mm,
Anyway, yeah,
yep.
awesome. And they looked at her and they asked her like, "Can you turn around and look at these women?" I think that it was used the word women. Maybe it was just survivors. I could be wrong, but in the panel of people, about ten victims of the Epstein case were sitting there. Did you know there's men there?
Mm, did
There were
not.
men standing there, sitting there, and we look at all of the women that were abused and neglected and just in all of that trafficking. It's not even thought about that dudes, little boys, men
Yeah,
were sexually molested in that whole ring. That drives me nuts. The silence
yeah.
kills.
But I mean, we have to go through training. Being a part of the YMCA, for this, and to look out for these types of things. What predators prey on. They look for things like isolation. They look for people that do not have big social arenas. And that's what they target. And so and then the intimidation factor that they fall into is like, you cannot tell. If you tell, this is what's going to happen. And it's it's sad to realize that people they do this. It's breaks my heart, to be honest.
Yeah, there's an interesting indicator. Now I'm not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this. I already started, so I'm going to be careful. There's a lot of clinical signs with this. I don't want
Hmm.
anybody kind of trying to take what I'm about to say and try to decipher if somebody's had this or not, because that can cause problems. I don't want that. But it is interesting. We've done things with rope courses, right? That's where you go out in the woods and you kind of crawl across a beam and you do climb ropes and you do team building activities with these rope exercises. And I learned a lot of years ago that, a lot of times it involves touching, right? So if you're the
Hmm.
instructor and you're giving my group of 10 people that are in this ropes course to build team presence and stuff, and you create like this story where you've gotten downed by an aircraft, you have to go over this valley, you have to survive by getting over this cliff, and so you walk across a 2x4, and people invariably fall, and you have to start over, and in this type of thing. Well, what happens is the group kind of problem solves through this, and they figure out that when we link arms or we
Mm.
touch and we hold each other, we can all very easily go across the beam. It makes balance very easy, right? And so, but you'll see. I wish we were live in person, but Kyle, if I reached out and gave you that sort of limp touch, you have you ever shaken somebody's hand where they're
Yeah,
barely squeezing, they're
yeah.
barely, or they're really squeamish about even reaching
Hmm.
out to do that. Like a lot of times that indicates, guess what? Sexual abuse. Because the touching is so uncomfortable and the body, Casey talked about in all these shows, the body remembers everything.
Right.
And so it's a powerful little script that I picked up a long time ago that, people are affected by this, man.
Well, here's something that John talked about in the conversation is during his first marriage with his kids. He didn't even want to bathe his own kids. He didn't want to see his kids naked because of what he went through and everything. Like, and
Yeah,
that was one of those things when we talk about PTSD. Like, and so he was almost feeling like he was a neglectful father because he didn't want to actually, take care of his kids in that way for that particular thing because of what he went through.
exactly.
So it impacted every bit of his life,
Yeah, yeah.
every
And
aspect.
I can't even begin to tell you the sexual problems, that happen in adult life. I mean, you kind of go. By the way, a very clear sign. This is one thing that you can maybe use to look out for that occurs to me. People are very naturally going to do one of two things when you're a victim of these types of things, men and women. By the way, this isn't really gendered. You'll either go hypersexual or sexualize everything, and you'll have a lot of it and do it all the time and all that, maybe multiple affairs and all kinds of things, hypersexual, or you just shut down your body and your spirit. You're like, I don't even want to have. I'm asexual. I don't want it. I don't ever want to touch it. Right? One of the two extremes, and you can go from one to the other as well. It just that's a very normal thing that happens for survivors of these things. Oh man, I agree, Neil. I'm
Mm.
super excited about the part two that people got to check out because we talked a lot more about recovery from this. This dude is well. I mean, this dude is solid. He went through torturous example of abuse, which, by the way, doesn't always have to be dramatic. Doesn't have to be so loud as trafficking and you know all of the things that you might hear with some of these stories. It can just be a little bit of an experience with your cousin who's 10 years older than you that made you feel very ashamed and was active sexually with you a few times. Yeah, it doesn't that's that qualifies, right? There's a lot of people that would think like, "Well, I didn't go through that. That's I can't claim." you know yeah, you can, man. You
I,
absolutely can, so be
I
careful
think
about how we
I
quantify this.
I think the other thing that you have to understand too that John talks about is when he talked because he actually helped other survivors through different things, but he said on average it would take he said 10 years to help these people process and work through
Yeah,
these things. So,
right.
so it's not even like, oh, you do 6 months of therapy and you're good. No, he said it 10 years was average to
Yeah.
help these kids help these people. I can't even say kids. These people get back to a pseudo normal state of living. Right.
And I can
That's the
attest to
reality of
that,
it.
Neil. I've walked through this with people. I mean, it's you know, it is not an immediate deal. I mean, you have a full relationship, and then sometimes you'll stop, and then you'll re-engage, and take another rest for a year, and then re-engage too. So it's. I mean, well, you weren't here, but you remember Stephanie Fast talked about that trauma of recovery that she went endured.
Yes,
She,
I wasn't here for her because I think she was before I hopped on.
yeah, it was like episode 10. It was very early on, and what a powerful story that was. Her book was She Is Mine. Um, Yeah, Kyle, can you tell that Neil and I were loving to do the show and the interview with him? I mean,
I
is
can
that
see
obvious?
that. Yeah, yeah.
it
I'm gonna have to
was
go back and listen to that one.
it was powerful. It was really powerful. Um, Neil, you want to introduce the daffodils? Like how do you remember the daffodils?
I'm kind
Because
of
I just
confused,
thought
but
that was powerful.
you because I kind of trying to figure out exactly the purpose of the daffodils, but can you explain it? Because I'm trying to remember exactly because I remember him saying the story a couple of times.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to because it really touched me in a way. I wasn't surprised, but I was kind of floored, and I saw that in his interviews, the documentaries. Dude's got a documentary. Check out the show notes and go check his stuff out. He's on Amazon Prime. Stop Traffic is one of the documentaries where his story was held, and then oh my gosh, what was the other one? Save me, Neil. Um, uh,
It's in the show notes,
Darkness, something. Yeah, I forget. A light in the darkness. Yeah,
something
check
like
that
that.
out.
Yeah.
Say that out loud for me when you get it. But the the part that really touched me because I like growing things, I like flowers and things like that, and I was really touched by his experience with these daffodils. So Kyle, he came across like his neighbor had like daffodils, and they were beautiful flowers, and he just noticed every year, the daffodils would come up and there was there was there was a process of like recognizing it's been another year, it's been another year, it's been another year. Every time these daffodils would come up and bloom, and it was just something that he noticed, and he really kind of caught his eye as well. And then one particular day, presumably when he was in his 40s, he he stopped a little bit longer, or what have you, noticed him a little bit different. They just hit him differently, and these beautiful daffodils just reminded him of the beauty of what he is and how he felt. And it almost like, to me, he didn't say this all this way, but it almost like gave him permission to engage. And 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 those daffodils kind of triggered for him, I need to talk about this. And that's when he launched in and engaged. It was a therapist that he chose to engage, and we'll tell that story next time for sure, about what that first therapy session was like, Neil. Holy cow, that was a heck of a therapy session, but it triggered him, his ability to go and launch into recovery. So I don't. I told
Right.
him on the show, like, I don't think I'll ever see daffodils again the same way.
Hmm.
Spring
Good
daffodils.
story.
Yeah.
I think the crazy part is his idea of the daffodils were another sign that he made it another year.
Right.
That's how bad it was for him, was that neighbor's daffodils. Oh, I made it another year, and it's just like that weird thought
Year,
process. Like, just
year
imagine,
after every year they bloomed.
for us normally it's like, oh yeah, it's my birthday, whatever. But like, that was an indicator for him, like, oh, I made it through another like horrible year. I'm still alive another year, right? That was that weird thought. That's what I took. One of the things I got from his daffodils was that perception of using the daffodils as a gauge to say, oh, I did make it another year, right? So
It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Um, Kyle, did we do a good job here at the end, taxing
Oh
out
yeah,
with daffodils, with the beauty of it and the recovery and the positive theme? Are we
I
less
like that.
depressed, man?
I like that. Going back to nature where we started, right?
Yeah. Look at the cardinals, man. They're absolutely beautiful. Look at the daffodils. They're absolutely delightful. I love that. That was unplanned, but here we go. Closing thoughts, gentlemen. Any closing thoughts or things we left out, Neil? Kyle? Good
I don't.
stuff.
I got nothing.
I
Good
got
stuff.
nothing. I mean, I'm gonna have to definitely go watch that last episode though.
Yeah,
Go
it's
back and
published
hear
on
that story.
YouTube.
Yeah.
You got the YouTube lives. Tell a friend, subscribe to the channel. Listen, we love doing this. We review the shows because it's fun to kind of review what we talked about, and we get different perspectives. And it's kind of cool doing these because, like, I'm there, we're interviewing, we're doing the shows, but then I reflect, and then when we talk again, there's oftentimes like things that I didn't get to say, or angles that I hadn't thought about since, and it's why we do these month in reviews. But we love doing this for you on Through a Therapist Eyes, so we invite you to come back for sure to see John King's part two of male sexual abuse and sex trafficking, PTSD, and recovery. So we will see you next week with that show. Stay well, stay warm if you're cold down up there up north. We had some weather up there.